What's up, fam? So it turns out that a couple of people enjoyed that I made one of these. So I'm going to keep doing them. And I figured what better jumping off point than to go right back to where we left off, which was the 5 conclusions that I'd come to over the last year. And the first one being that everything is energy. And the subplot to that is that everything that you've ever thought is real or solid is a hologram. Full stop. And I'm going to prove it to you. And I'm going to prove it to you by 1 minute worth of video. And I'll stop a couple of times and talk you through what I'm showing. So here we go. A voyage into the world of atoms. So here we are, we're zooming in on hair, right? Zooming in, okay, individual strands of hair. About 100 nanometers, I think that's what that is. Micrometers, maybe. No, individual cells, okay. Macrofibrils, okay. Oh, what's this here? Microfibril, okay. Right, and you just keep going and going and going. And we will ultimately find our way down into atoms, okay? Now, here, let's pause right here. This is perfect. So this is the first time where I think you have the opportunity to really break the fourth wall, if you will, because you think about an atom and you consider like, oh, that's a solid thing, but it's not. And we think about it as a little ball, right? And already you can see as we're transitioning from this grouping of balls, as we start to go in, it's not a ball. The ball shape represents a probability sphere of where the electrons might be at any given time relative to where the protons and the neutrons might be at any given time. And it's like at this level where the quantum realm starts to really play a significant part. And it matters, and it's so interesting because this is where I start to get very convinced that religion and science intersect in the quantum. Because anyway, let's pause, or I should say, let's resume. We'll come back to it. Okay, electron orbitals. It's like, okay, so this is where the electrons are most likely to be. Okay, do you see what's happening? Do you see what's happening? The nucleus is so far away from the electron, no matter where it is, right? You've got that big probability cloud, which even overemphasizes the scope of what the atom is, because it's, yes, that's the cloud is where it could be, but it's only a very small, tiny bit of it. It would be like in the town of Grafton, which has, 20,000 people and is miles across. My fist is the nucleus, and the electron could be anywhere in the town of Grafton, right? That's not a solid thing. It's completely empty. It's ridiculous. Everything that you see that you think is solid is not. It's all empty. And that's even if you assume that the nucleus of an atom is solid. Even if you assume that, it's still, there's nothing. It would all be blank space with a probability of maybe an electron here or there. But then you keep going. And, oh, what do we have here? Protons and neutrons. What's in there? Oh, it's actually, there's something inside of protons. And what is it? Oh, well, it's these quarks. What are quarks? Oh, gosh. I guess we got to unpack even further. We just keep going. Well, what you're going to end up getting to is leptons, bosons, and then nothing else. All you find is energy. That's it. That's all there is a slow vibration of energy oscillating energy contained in an incredibly small, what we think of as space. And then there's nothing. That's it. And so, what is it exactly that we think is real? And it's the work in the tank that has led me to these conclusions, because after you spend hundreds of hours um, in pitch black with no sound and nothing but your thoughts, you have the opportunity to really, peel apart some of this stuff. And it's so clear to me now. It was not then, nor do I expect it to be clear to anybody other than me, that when you close your eyes, and by the way, I don't think I told everybody about this. I have a condition called aphantasia, which means that I don't have a mind's eye. And that makes me a little unique, more than just the obvious, which is that I'm different, because only 1 in 100 or so people have this particular, let's call it a mutation. It's actually, I think, an adaptation. I'll talk more about that in a second. But not having a mind's eye means that when I'm in the tank and I can close my eyes, like, I don't see anything. It's just black. And I think that that has been a crazy hack for me on this journey, because I think it has allowed me to just plunge backwards into peace in ways that I think, if I had imagery flooding me, would just be impossible. Um, at least at this pace, right? It would just mean that I would have different things that I would have to work through. But in terms of like the states I was getting to in the tank, and after this episode, I'll upload the video I took of the first transcendental experience that I had. Um, anyway, it's just astonishing when you consider, okay, so what is it exactly that we think is real, right? We just talked about zooming all the way in, and all you find is a slow vibration of energy. But even just like what you interact with, right? Like, oh, my little seltzer can. Hey, Wegmans, incredible. What is it exactly that I think this is? It is, I'm only seeing like a ridiculous small fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? What does a bat see, or a bird, or an ant, or whatever? Like, pick a thing that's an organic life form that has eyeballs. What does it take into it when it sees this thing? And that's just one example. It's like one way of interpreting energy, right? Is sight. And it's just one, and it's one input to a um, a very finite set of planes, dimensions, right? Everybody knows 3 dimensions: height, width, depth. Einstein gave us the um, the gift of knowing that the way we perceive time is tethered to that, right? Space-time continuum, meaning that if you have a cube of Play-Doh and you push it in one direction, right, it's going to change um, the dimensions. Changing one dimension has an impact on the others. And so having the 4th dimension of time, and they're all interconnected, as you get closer to the speed of light, it starts to impact um, the mass and the size of things, and vice versa. Same things happen. Similar properties happen around gravity. So I think that gravity is the 5th dimension. And I've recently, Meg shared with me this set, a mathematical set called the monster, which I have only very, very lightly investigated, but appears to potentially implicate that there's 190 plus thousand dimensions. And this mathematical set has a proof, I believe it's tens of thousands of pages long and took decades to complete across hundreds of participants. And basically, it's like the most beautiful thing that you can conceive of. There's more symmetries in it than there are stars in the universe, and that's a big number. And no one knows why this thing exists, what it means. Um, and I'm talking about this because I think if you paint the edge of something that's much farther outside of what you normally think of, it makes like the next step a little easier. At least it does that for me. So, we're playing around. Obviously, gravity, if it is the fifth, like we at least appreciate that it has an interaction with us. When we see what happens around black holes, right? Extreme gravity, we see how it has an interplay with light and time, etc. So anyway, um, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't assume that there's more dimensions that we just don't know how to measure. And what I have been experiencing since 2020 is that, whatever the hell this represents, these chakras or whatever the hell they're called. And different systems call it chi, different systems call it Holy Spirit, different awesome systems call it the Force. But it's all energy and it all acts in the same way. And to me, it is the sixth dimension. And it is the thing that when people are getting sick and they don't know why, it's because this is unattended to. There's stuff that's screwing with your chi. There's a disturbance in the force. And it's remarkable how little time it takes to become sensitive to it if you fully dedicate yourself to it. And it's easy to do that when you've had some remarkable experiences to encourage you to do so. Or if, like me, you were simply at sort of the end of your rope and you had tried all the other things that people had put in books or talked about on stage or shared with you around a fire or whatever. And it's like you've tried every fucking thing that there is. And you're still somehow not just dissatisfied, but like every molecule of my body was like a combination of on fire and electrified, basically at all times for 38 years. And I didn't notice it because I was constantly looking for the next high. And I'm going to start rambling. I'm going to try and backfill my way into answering questions that I imagine people might have as I start talking about stuff. So I'll explain how I came to all this conclusion about chi. I think I might have mentioned it in my last video, and maybe if I didn't, apologies, but I was having a issue with the kids were, being kids, being rambunctious, playing upstairs, and I was having a lot of emotional reaction to it. And Meg asked me to think back to my childhood, if there was anything where, I was downstairs and things had been happening upstairs. And as like I plugged all the things together, I could just feel this cascade of energy exploding out of me. And it was just, I was frozen. It was so powerful for like 30 seconds. And from that moment forward, I haven't had a problem with the kids in that way, by the way. It's now like childhood mirth to me, whereas before it was fight or flight, like I had to stop it or it was like the world was going to end. Anyway, and then the other example I think I gave was dancing downstairs. Well, eventually I started paying attention to, like, okay, so what is it that makes this stuff flow? And, it's just, people have been writing about this stuff, talking about this stuff for thousands of years. And there's just nothing you're ever going to read that's going to prove it to you more than just feeling it yourself. And what I started feeling was the more of the experiences I had, like I did on the couch, releasing whatever you want to call it, the trapped stuff, the more access I had to the energy that flowed that night when I was dancing. And like being able to see those two things connected close enough together, and reading and hearing people talk about, okay, so like you've got some skaras that are blocking, the flow of your chi. And when you move them out, your chi is going to flow better and you're going to feel this way. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, it appears that that's actually true. And so it's like, all right, so how do I get this shit out of here? Right? It's like at that point, it just becomes a math equation. And so I just kind of got after it. And what that looks like for me is that any time that I get triggered, and I don't mean that in the co opted, wokeified snowflake version, I mean you're having a response to something that traumatized you so badly that you literally are not in control of your body. Anyway, so anytime that I get triggered, which is daily, I mean daily, and it used to be, in retrospect, it wasn't just daily, it was all day, every day. And when I say all day, I mean, you couldn't say every minute, every 15 minutes, 90% of 15-minute blocks in a day, I would have been triggered. That's a real thing. And how bad, okay, well, maybe I just have to like distract myself by surfing a site that makes me feel better. How bad? It could be as bad, and this is the last thing, and it was probably the thing that sort of shoved me over the edge into this whole process. Um, as bad as flipping a coffee table in your own house and then monkey stomping it like an animal. Yeah, so that's fun. And anyway, so getting these things out, it clearly felt better. And and I guarantee that anybody listening to this has had that experience in their life. The experience of, oh my God, I just feel like the weight has just been lifted off my shoulders. Whether it's because you got a hug from somebody who you love and that you just felt like really was there for you and shared a burden, or you broke down and you just cried a cathartic cry and you released a bunch of pent up energy about something that you've been carrying around for a long time. The feeling you have after that, that like just light airiness, you can feel like that all the time. That's on the way to base state. It turns out that base state is actually nirvana or heaven. We'll talk about that more later. So as I get triggered and I feel like, if you don't have PTSD, maybe you don't have that kind of a reaction, right? And I don't mean necessarily even literally, but it feels like that inside. It's just like, who the anytime you've ever had a reaction where who the fuck, what the fuck, how the fuck, right? Why the fuck, any of that, who, what, where, when, why, the fuck. Oh, this is a really good. I'm actually gonna write that down. You're being triggered 100% of the time, because everything just is. The whole universe just is. And so if your reaction to it is a something the fuck, then it's hitting something inside of you. It's vibrating you in a way that you can't stand it. And you feel like you're gonna jump out of your skin. And the way that manifests in human behavior is, I got to fix it. I got to do something. So if somebody says something to you that pisses you off, then, or like maybe hurts your feelings, then I've got to do something about it. Looks like I'm going to hurt you so badly that you never dare to hurt me like that again. Right? That's the way I'm going to try and control that situation. So it's, these responses when energy gets released are not pleasant. And, a much less toxic version of that is just, or I shouldn't say toxic because it's all toxic, but doesn't necessarily manifest as anything except somebody's own self-torment, is somebody having road rage in their car. And the person that they're pissed at has no fucking idea that this human being even exists, let alone that they've been aggrieved in any way, right? They are just going to work or whatever it is they're doing. And this person is like having a storm in their car. And it's because it's all coming out. It's not because somebody forgot their blinker or, followed too closely or did something trivial, right? Like, yes, okay, there are things where somebody cuts you off and you've got your family in the car and like, yes, I get it. There are occasions where there are high emotion situations that are warranted. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when somebody is not going quite fast enough for you, right? And it's like that. I've seen people, by the way, I've been that person and I know plenty of them in my family, where it's just like, what are you doing? And it's because it has nothing to do with the situation. It has to do with all the stuff that's getting pierced because you're late or you're going to run out of gas because you didn't stop and fill it up before. And now you're lashing yourself because you should have done it, right? It's like there's an endless volley of things that could be swirling with you in that car that have nothing to do with the person who didn't go through the green light fast enough. And now you've got to wait that 2 minutes while the red light cycles. And it's like, I'm just thinking from my own personal experience, the amount of energy that I committed to this plane about being late when it just didn't matter. I mean, just not because it just nothing matters, because it doesn't. It's all a hologram. But like even in the game, right? Like if you're inside the realm and you're playing the game and you got the rules and you're just like you're operating as if this all matters. That doesn't, right? Like you'll find that the behavior you exhibit is rarely rational. Rarely rational. But what I found is that if I talk to myself either in writing or out loud or with friends or whatever about the rational side of it, my mind shuts up. That's actually how I got over the fear of death finally. I was in my kitchen and I was having a panic attack. I was actually ramping through an anxiety attack and I knew exactly where it was going. I was like, oh, okay, been here before. And it was anytime it was about death, it would be typically because either I was wildly overslept or I got too high, one or the other. And it was because like there was a wall that I had built and it was like the wall from Game of Thrones. And it's like the big wall, but it's still a wall. And all walls have a freaking finite top, right? And so like eventually it's going to get crashed through. And I think I remember the first one. No, maybe it wasn't the first one, but maybe the worst one. I had been up for like 3 days. And I was just like, it was completely overwhelming me. I was trying to like jump out of the car with Meg. This is in like 2009, I think. I was working like 100 hours a week at the time. It was absolutely bananas. Anywho, where was I going with that? In the car, trigger storms, energy, blockages, chi. So once that energy's out, I'm going all over the place, but I'm just running with it. once the energy is out, by the way, it I say out in the car, but it's not actually out in the car. I have not yet figured this out, but it seems that for whatever reason, once this stuff is pierced, it is like somehow still lashed to the expanse of your body, meaning like wherever you had the thing got cracked, think of it like a clay pot, the samskaras, wherever that got cracked, it's not like you don't leave it behind. You can't leave it on the park bench and go home. It's like it's still inside of you. But what I've found is it travels. And once it's cracked, it will feel like anxiety. It'll feel like a vibration, like something's wrong. It'll feel like you have something to fix. And what it really is it just wants acknowledgement of what the fuck it is, whatever it is. And so how you get that out, there's so many different ways. It's crazy. You can cry, you can hug somebody, you can have a somatic release, which means that, you vibrate or whatever. You can do tuning fork therapy, you can do reiki, you can do massage, you can do yoga, you can do acupuncture, right? Like, I mean, literally there's dozens and dozens of these things, and they're all working on the exact same thing, which is how do I get that energy that you trapped inside of you because something happened to you that you weren't prepared to deal with. It hit your heart chakra. It's near your heart, and it vibrated in a way that you couldn't tolerate. And if until you're an adolescent, so think 12 to 16, 18, it's impossible for you. It is literally impossible for you. This is original sin. Original sin is that you don't realize that you're divine and you have control over everything. You have no idea. And you're trapped behind this mind, this if this, then that machine that gets built in front of you. And you're just like, everything goes on autopilot. I'm going to dive into that actually. Fuck it. Let's make this one a weird one. So, original sin. It would appear that human consciousness gets layered in at some point in vitro. Who knows when? Who could say? But from that moment forward, you are the same consciousness from then until you die. There is no break in that continuity. And it's the same consciousness that knows if you slept, meaning if you dreamt. It's the same thing all the time. You look in the mirror, and what the mirror shows you, what the mirror reflects, what the hologram displays is different. But your consciousness, the same thing behind your closed eyes, has been the same thing since the moment that this thing got bridged in. And again, is it the zygote? Is it when you get your pineal gland? I don't know. I hope to find out because I think it's interesting. But no other reason really. Anyway, so you get bridged in, and there is literally nothing that you can make sense of because you are an infinite consciousness. Our consciousness has God-like control over this realm. What do I mean? For nearly 14 billion years, and for all of these talks, I'm going to operate under the assumption that the Big Bang is, if not true, it's a version of truth that's worth talking about. Like it's worth using it as a proxy for something else, right? In the same way that talking about Mount Olympus thousands of years ago was useful because it represented something that helped people survive and evolve. Right, same kind of concept. Shit, I lost myself. Original sin. See, this is the problem that happens when you go into flow state and you just jump off a cliff. You might not find your way. But that's the cool part about editing. Maybe I won't edit it and make you suffer through watching this too, because then you get to be exposed to the mistakes. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Anyway, so you're bridged in, and you are an infinite consciousness. You have access, technically, if you fall backwards, and eventually what that means will make sense. You can access everything because you are everything. But there's like this bizarre cutoff where you don't realize it. And that's just something else. It's very perverse because, like I was saying, nearly 14 billion years of evolution come into play, and then suddenly this consciousness gets bridged in. And every single thing that has ever happened in the universe, as far as we know, as far as we can tell, every single thing from plasma to quarks to atoms to stars to us, everything has been if this, then that. It's been a math problem. The kind of thing where when we run these like random forest data science simulations to figure out like what is probability of outcome, and you basically you run all the way through a simulation to see like if all of these conditions were true, what would the outcome be? Well, that's basically how the universe ran until humans showed up. Everything just happened, if this and that. It was like a giant is it Rube Goldberg machine? The thing that, anyway, you guys don't know what I'm talking about. It's just a series of things bumping into each other, making something else happen. And a lion eating a gazelle is just the same thing in a more complicated fashion. It's more dimensions, different complexities of energy, but it's no fucking different than that little 6-ball thing that you've seen on people's desk. It's the same thing. If this, then that. It's all just a math problem. If you knew the position, the temperature, the vector, if you could tell everything about every particle going on, you could predict the future in that realm. Enter the human. You are a child of God. Humanity is made in God's image because we can change the universe. And I don't think that people appreciate the levity of what that means. Because I'm not kidding when I say it. I mean it as literally and scientifically as I can. We are the only things that we know of in the universe that can interrupt the if this, then that pattern by invoking our consciousness upon it. Like the scale of that is outrageous. And that is why I decided to call this whole thing the Apprenticing Jedi. Because I actually think that if you had enough of a time horizon and you had a guide and you had totems, things that could bring you to waypoints faster than random chance, I think you could do every fucking thing in the Star Wars movies. Force throw, levitate, like whatever, all of it. Read minds, confuse people's minds. The most basic, simple, and it's right out of the gate in the first movie. Well, the fourth movie. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Absolutely think that's possible. And the only reason why we don't take advantage of it, well, there's actually 2 reasons. One's more fun than the other. One is because people are playing a completely different game. A very painful game, a game full of endless suffering. And it's a fool's errand. You can't win the game. That's the fun part. As anybody from Anthony Bourdain to anyone who has either ended their life or just lived a life clearly sprinting from demons. And whether demons look like, something really actually terrible or, things of your own design, it's all of your own design at some point. And my hope is that by sharing some of this stuff about how I've found my way out of some of it personally, that other people can start some kind of a healing as well. Or if I'm way off base, then maybe I can get guided towards a bigger capital T truth, one or the other. But so far, it would appear that the things that I am experiencing that are showing up as that my intuition is telling me is capital T truth, it appears to be so because it is, well, it's working, and it appears to be helping other people. Anyway, so back to being a baby, an original sin. So the fall from grace, the whole Garden of Eden parable, the whole concept is that you go from being in this animalistic, if this then that world, which is that is the Garden of Eden, guys. It never being able to make a mistake is what heaven is. Wow, I never considered that till just now. Never being able to make a mistake is what heaven is. And when you do what the born again Christians would say, I'm saying that specifically, I actually don't know what they would say. Any Christian, you found Christ. Well, what I'm talking about, you could consider a version of that. But again, I think it's all the same shit. Whether it's Zen Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, or you can just keep going back. I just watched a documentary on Amazon Prime about these 32,000-year-old cave paintings that are just so impressive and so unbelievable. These people crawled into these crazy dark places. It's not like they just like walked in. It's like this big open air thing. Like they're crawling in between stuff, ducking under stalactites. And they're going into these open rooms and painting these beautiful things by torches. And it's like, why? Tens of thousands of years ago. Why were they doing it? It's clearly a divine act. It's an incredible film. Highly recommend. The one that I can't name. I'll put it in the show notes. That's a fun thing to say out loud, I guess. Anyway, so to go from the pure beauty and endless loving embrace of God's arms, which is what it means to never be able to make a mistake. And that just means math. I think we overcomplicate this religion thing. I think we have, well, I mean, we've obviously done a lot of harm, but we've wasted a lot of time getting so fucking literal. It's just, it bums me out, but that's fine. It all is what it is. Because at the end of the day, it's all like a sneeze in time, 13 point something billion years. Our crawl out of the trees is really only about 3 million years of that, which is like, it's not even, 1/1000th. Anyway, so the burden, man, it's wild to come up with this stuff live. Well, I mean, it's not literally live, but having these conclusions as I'm sitting here talking, this is a really useful mechanism for me. Maybe I'll do this every day and I just won't even publish them, or maybe I will and it'll all get sick of me. The burden of having the power of God, and not like I have lightning from my fingers and I can turn you into a frog, but like, please don't downplay what I said. We're the first thing in history that we know of that could change anything about the universe. At a minimum, that makes us demigods. At a minimum. It's so crazy. So imagine now, and whether you take stoned ape theory, which is we took, chimps or whatever the hell, ate some psilocybin containing psilocin containing mushrooms, and all of a sudden had they became aware that they were aware. That's one theory. And there's obviously a litany of others. But regardless, we know that there was a time when there was a version of us that had less horsepower and less data, remarkably less data. If I spoke for the next 100 hours straight, I wouldn't be able to talk enough about the significance about how much remarkably less data. Which goes to that whole abortion thing I was talking about. Why the actual crime in abortion has nothing to do with cute faces or heartbeats or whatever. There's so much data in a human. There's so much data. There was a game I played a few years ago, when I was at like the peak of my anxiety. It really allowed me to escape. It was the stupidest, simplest game in the whole universe. It was planes that went around a circle, and as they went around, they earned some type of a resource. I can't remember what, coins, points, whatever. And eventually, if you got, I think it was 4 of them, you could collapse them into, you could level them up into the next version. So like from 1 to 2, maybe it was 10 planes. I can't remember, some multiple. And then same thing, you have to now aggregate some number of number 2s to then evolve them into a number 3. And I gave up the game at some point when I had reached, oh God, I'm sick thinking about it. It was definitely over, I want to say it was over 50. I had reached the 50s, I think. And if you had a plane that was a level 50, your human mind can't really appreciate what went into creating that. Like the number of things that got gobbled up to ascend into that thing. And it's kind of the similar concept. And I wonder if that is why Buddhists are vegetarian, because the most godly thing you could do would be to subsist on the things that have the least data. Right? Like, don't go kill and eat a fucking 200-year-old tortoise in the Galapagos Islands. That's just not necessary. In the same way, taking down anything in the rainforest is just stupid. And anything that we're doing in the forests of California is absolutely insane. And I know that's not food, but just like resource-wise, it's just like, no, so much data. It's so old. There's so much there. There's so much knowledge. The same thing with human life. Yes, we can change things in the universe, but don't get it twisted. That doesn't mean that you are God, at least not in the mindful state that you could possibly, start your journey on. So the hubris will add nothing. But the acknowledgement that, like, okay, I've got a burden now where I have godlike power and no awareness, right? To go back to the original sin thing, I'm a baby, I'm a fetus, and I've got near infinite power, near infinite consciousness, if not infinite, and it's trapped behind it's like Wizard of Oz curtain, which I wonder if that's the allegory there. I have no idea. That's a funny thing to consider. But, going back to the whole, I promise this is all connected. Going back to the electromagnetic spectrum concept, you've got, we see bufangol. We see nothing. Visible light is nothing. It's like this tiny little piece. It's like, oh, it's a little too energetic. Ultraviolet, can't see it. Ooh, it's a little too cool. Infrared, can't see it. It's like, what? Never mind. Gamma, fucking X-ray, and all this other stuff. There's so much. And that's just the stuff that we know about. It's just the stuff we know about, guys. There's so many things that we don't understand. It's disgusting. And really basic ones, like a monarch butterfly. Monarch butterflies start off in southern Canada and northern America, or northern United States, contiguous, called Maine. And they will start migrating south. And they end up dying somewhere. I think the first batch dies somewhere around Connecticut. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. Or you can look it up for me and tell me. Or if you happen to know, enlighten me. But I know for sure that they die on their way. They're going to Mexico. They're going to some pine something, copper something, canyon, forest something. They're going to Mexico. And they line these trees, and there's just like fucking billions of them. It's crazy. And they die, like I said, on the way there. And then their kin are born, and they go through the whole process, right? Got to be a caterpillar, chrysalis. And then they just keep going, guys. They keep going. And then they die, and their kin keep going. How? How? Where's the what? We know I'm saying it only to be illustrative that there's so much we don't know about. There are clearly dimensions we don't understand and connections. But the thing is that no matter what they are, it's all energy. Because again, I was trying to prove to you the three dimensions that we consider quote unquote real: height, width, depth. Height, width, depth. It's an illusion. There's nothing there. There's nothing that we think of in this realm that can be demonstrable, that can be demonstrated to be quote unquote real, solid. There, it's just not. It's all waves. So you have a godlike consciousness extruded through a hilarious set of constraints, right? The vision one is the first example. It's like, we're going to give you this. Okay, pretty arbitrary, but we got a sun here emitting a good amount of the part we can see. So cool. All right, thank you. You can feel things, but only in the way that this arbitrary set of equipment can handle. So like your eyelashes, for instance, you don't even notice it. Your eyelashes are there for a reason. They're giant. I mean, yes, they're there to protect you from dust and whatnot, but they're also a giant sensory input. They're telling you stuff all the time. There's all kinds of stuff going on all over you all the time. It's so arbitrary, guys. Imagine if you were a horse or a fly or this or that. Like all of it could be completely different, and your experience would be completely different. And that's why I'm saying it's arbitrary. Like the selection of things that you have for sight, for taste, right? For smell. Think about just your own dog or cat. What do they smell that you don't? Right? That one thing alone. You could sit there and ponder that mystery for the rest of your life, and it should never stop like blowing your mind, because it's insane. It's insane that there's entire dimensions that we operate in collaboratively with other organic life forms, and we still don't understand it. Now, sidebar, man, this is so many sidebars. I'm like going to give myself freaking whiplash. No, I can't do it. I can't do that. I got to bring it back. Be doing this all night. So now you are in a womb, and it's the perfect temperature according to the programming in your DNA and your mind. And it's just warm, and it just sounds like white noise. And you're getting incredible chemicals from your mom telling you that everything's going to be great. And then you get extruded in one of two ways. Extracted. Like extruded or extracted, one or the other. And there's no way for that to be anything less than traumatic. It's not possible, right? You've got random ass set of inputs, no clue what you are, but everything seems pretty cool. Everything's kind of heaven. Just like, hey, what's up, dudes? Just love it. It's cool. Oh, you're singing to me? Love it. And then all of a sudden, you are thrust into a whole new set of sensorial experience. Lights, beeps, even let's pretend you did the great thing where, you're in a birthing thing in your house and chanting, and you're doing whatever. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Yes, it's going to be less shitty for the baby, but it does not matter. You're still going from, okay, I thought this was cool, to at some point you're no longer in that water, and at some point you are no longer on that umbilical cord, and no one was able to tell you what the fuck is going on. You don't know. You're literally just there, and stuff's pouring in, and you're like, ah, ah, and it's like that for the rest of your life. That's literally the entire way that your mind has assembled everything. From that point forward, it was just a comparison of like, does this suck? Like, what does it make me feel inside? And then I'm going to either try and get more of the stuff that feels good, the womb, or I'm going to run away from the things that make it feel bad, the experience of exiting the womb. And so all of our defense mechanisms, everything we do, becomes an automatic response that was built from literally the moment we were born as a defense mechanism to the vibrations going on in this insane machinery. I was listening to Michael Singer. He was giving a lecture, and he was talking about, imagine if you took Genghis Khan, Hitler, anybody who thought they were, evil, badass, whatever, and you throw them in a Mercedes going 90 on the Autobahn, and you could even be driving, and just see how calm and cool and badass they look. They're going to be having an absolute unmitigated panic attack, and they're going to think you're a god. How can you be so calm, cool, and collected? Driving with your pinky finger, you're drinking a coffee on the phone. What the hell? Like, they can't conceive of it because they have no data. They've not seen the things that you've seen. They haven't experienced the things, and they haven't conquered whatever it took for you to get into the place that you could do that. They have a totally different set of things. Anyway, so there's a point that I imagine in indigenous times where we would get to an age where we were grown up enough to understand, oh, oh, I'm not my mind. Oh, I'm not my emotions. Oh, I'm not my body. I am this divine thing that has complete control over all of it. And I should grow up and do something about that. And I think that's what coming of age ceremonies, bat mitzvahs, whatever, used to be. A period of going from a point of dependence and confusion to independence and discovery, but with awareness of your divinity. And I think that very likely used to be guided by either extreme circumstances, like, okay, you're going to end up fasting, and you're going to do that because we kicked you out of the tribe, and you're now out in the jungle for 30 days and you're not sleeping at night because you're terrified of the fucking panthers, right? Like, and now you're on your seventh day of not having slept, and now you're hallucinating, and now you're seeing things, and now you're experiencing things that you otherwise would not have been exposed to. Anyway, my whole point is that, guys, we had the fucking answers to the goddamn test. I'm going to do a whole thing on this topic, but we had the answers to the test. I shared it. I shared it with my friends today. I think Meg sent it to me. There's a guy on TikTok, and he was reading a letter from Christopher Columbus, or pages out of his diary or whatever. He was talking about the Native Americans, or the natives, whether it was in somewhere in the Caribbean or somewhere on the mainland of America. But regardless, he talked about how they were just the most beautiful people, and they couldn't care less about themselves. It was all about the community. And I just had a mild anxiety attack realizing that, did this thing start recording? I never actually confirmed it. And that would be a hilarious amount of stuff to have to try and retread. And I surely wasn't going to take it on tonight. Anyway. And he's just waxing poetic, and he's like, they're just the most gentle, beautiful people in the whole world. And then he's like, with 50 people, we could completely take them over and make them do whatever we want. And that ethos, where that came from, the fall, and it sounds like in my recent discussions with some people who are a lot more learned than I on the topic, it sounds like in the 300 AD time frame, the original branch of Christianity, which was all rooted in the stuff I'm talking about. Christ was a mystic. Of that much I am convinced. Which is the whole reason why he was killed, because he was in the same reason why all the women who've ever exhibited any kind of supernatural power are summarily executed. And it's the same thing we did to the Native Americans, and that we did and continue to do, really, all around the world. Anywhere we find someone who is not on the hyper masculine progress train. And I say hyper masculine not because it's driven by men, although yes, that is true, and that made the masculinity part of consequence, but because money and power and those things are just, they're masculine goals that control all of that stuff. Like, when you have a balanced society or a feminine society, right? Like, if you could have a completely feminized society and you have a whole different set of problems. What we did is we wildly, and I mean wildly, over rotated on masculinity. And that showed up in multiple ways, right? It showed up in, we removed women from society. Oh, you can't have jobs, you can't do this, you can't vote, right? So we removed femininity that way by literally eliminating women from all the operating mechanisms, and therefore largely what developed culture. And then we eliminated all of the femininity for men, right? We started talking about it as toxic masculinity. And I remember the thing that really drew me into the conversation was the whole Gillette commercial, because I thought it was actually rather brilliant. In retrospect, it was, I didn't see the tip of the woke mafia that I was inviting at the time, but regardless, the premise I'm still very much on board with, which is like, don't be a dick. And like, be a warrior poet, be a Jedi, be a Christ, which is be all of it, which is be nothing. And when I say be nothing, I mean the real power, the real beauty, the real amazing stuff happens when you have the divinity and the power, and you almost never do anything with it. And instead, you become an instrument of the universe. And whatever the universe needs of you, oh, wow, that's what a Jedi is. A Jedi is a human, Christ like form who has hollowed themselves out to the point where they have there's no ego left. They need nothing. They want nothing. And before that, either before that or during that process, I believe that they have developed their machinery, their mind, and their body into a thousand petal lotus, such that it can take any shape. And so that would mean that, like, you've mastered language, you've mastered math, and your body, you've got strength and flexibility and all this stuff. And then you are in service to the universe. So my hypothesis, the thing I was talking about before, is that the universe is trying to ascend. To what and why, I have no fucking idea. It's none of my business. Why does God, the whole thing, why does it want to do that? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's happening. I'm in it. I'm of it. So it is a useless exercise to fret over why, unless it helps inform what you're going to do. But people have been thinking about this for thousands of years, and the fretting only adds to the suffering. So to me, it seems like a fool's errand. So instead, by giving yourself over to the universe, you are giving it the level 1000 plane that has gobbled up all of the things beneath it for 14 billion years. And you are now a sojourner in the world with a level of power so grand, it's nearly unspeakable. And if you have done it in a true Jedi fashion, then you will be the complete warrior poet. You will have full control over all masculine and feminine energy, and you will be able to answer all tasks, whatever that looks like. One of the things I have thought very curious over the last period of time is how much of the people who have looked like saints have ended up having what I think to be extremely feminine qualities. And not that that is a bad thing at all. It's an interesting thing, though. And I wonder, is there a version of what would it look like if somebody had all of the love, but they were also capable of anything at any time? And you are just literally a utility of the universe. Whatever the universe asks of you, you are just there, and it's just pouring through you. And everybody who's listening to this actually knows the feeling of what that's like. Anytime you've been in flow state, that's what you're doing. I don't know if you know that or not. That's why it feels so good, because it's divine. You're channeling the universe. You're not doing anything. You're just being. You're just there, witness to the experience, whether it's playing music, making love, painting, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the thing is. Your mind goes away. Your mind shuts up. Whether it's just as simple as you're sitting there eating breakfast and you see the most remarkable sunrise, and you're just taken away, you're transported, you're captivated, you're arrested. It's the same thing. Your mind shuts up for a second, and the universe is free to just do whatever it wants before you showed up and started getting in the way. And the getting in the way, I'm gonna have to go back and transcribe this. because I want to jump into each of these things individually at some point. The getting in the way is what creates karma. Because the universe is trying to fucking do something, guys. It's trying to ascend. It has an operating system. In the operating system, it says random shit. It's all arbitrary. Like the triangle is the strongest two-dimensional shape in the universe. Cool. Why? Why? I don't know. It's true. Tell me it's not true. Show me how it's possible to make it not true. Tell me why it should be true. It's just freaking random. Anyway, this is a good example of when you go on a rant and you get completely lost. You can't find your way back. Staring at the mouse of this seltzer can, praying that it's going to bring me back, and I don't think it's going to. But that's all right. I wasn't meant to talk about it anymore. That's fine. Oh, karma. That's right. So, as we are imposing ourselves upon the universe and lashing out because we're terrorized, we're terrified that, oh my God, I feel something and I don't want to feel it. And now I need to arrange the universe in a different way to stop this from feeling this way. Everything you touch, everything you say and do that is a result of that is adding karma to your stub. And whether that's your DNA or your soul or whatever, some combination of those things. The DNA might be like a lookup. I don't know if you saw the movie Soul. If it's like that's how they, you get picked. It's like, yeah, I know that. I know that story. I want to go check that out. Anyway, it's I think the universe is a giant closed ledger system. It's like, okay, you don't want that. Oh, cool. Where's that energy coming from? And whatever it took to do that, you're now taking it on to you. And I think for the trivial things, it doesn't bring on that much. But when you really like burst some energy onto the scene, that can create multi-generational karma of very high orders that can take lifetimes to pay down. And I think that my biggest gift to the universe was being able to pay down what felt like many generations of karmic debt, such that my children have less of this shit to deal with when they eventually make it to their coming of age. Still haven't figured out what that ceremony would be. That'll be cool. It's got to involve some kind of a cat, though, a big cat. Just kidding. Don't fucking call DSS for Christ's sake, guys. Time for that shit. God, I just always want to talk about woke stuff. It drives Meg nuts. It's so funny. You end up on a crazy spiritual adventure, and then you still end up with like the little things that wrap you around the axle, and that's one of them. Anyway, so the incentives to do nothing, and I want to define do nothing, but the incentives to do nothing are extraordinary. But do nothing doesn't mean sit on the couch and eat a bag of Cheetos and watch Shark Week. Not that any of those things individually is a bad thing, by the way. I enjoy all of those things, just not all of the time into perpetuity. But that's not what do nothing means. Do nothing means do whatever your intuition tells you to do every instant for the rest of your life. And if you did that, what you would feel is you would feel nirvana. You would be in heaven, and you would go to where Christ went. You would go to where Buddha went, where the greatest masters have flirted with or gone, and everything would be perfect all the time because there are no problems in the universe. The universe is just ascending, and it just is. It just is what it is. If it's a problem, it's because your mind has not found a way to handle it yet. There are no problems, period. None. They just don't exist. Is it a problem for the quark? Is it a problem for the Milky Way? It's not a problem. It is something that your mind is telling your consciousness a problem, and your consciousness is unfortunately wasting its time and energy believing it. So I think we can all become Christ. I think we can all become. I mean, it's crazy sacrilege stuff, and it's like, does this get you kicked off of platforms? Does this does it make you controversial, and then there people talk about you and whatever? I don't know. But what if Christ was like the stage gate? Like, you want to get to Christ so that you can do like the next stuff. What if Christ was even an incomplete Jedi? What if there's things to which we could ascend that we have absolutely no ability to comprehend whatsoever? Right? We comprehend roughly 5, 6 dimensions, and there's math that implies 100 and something thousand, which means that you could imply infinity. For all intents and purposes, it's all nonsense at that point. I don't even know what to say about it all. It's just crazy. So lose the hubris. It's not about you. It never has been, it never will be. And that's the sad part about the people who spend their dying years trying to get names on buildings and stuff. It's like, oh man, you missed the whole point. The whole point, that was like the thing you're supposed to be doing when you were like 15, like getting rid of that part. 18. The whole point is you are no one. We're all no one. We are all one. We are all the same, right? Like, you don't look at your hand and say that each individual cell is its own thing. It's like, it's your hand, it's your body, okay? It's the earth, it's the Milky Way, it's the universe. We are all the same thing. The level of, zoom that you choose to look at, again, it's the one that we're granted here, right? You go back to the original like set of things you're granted on birth. That level of zoom is fully arbitrary, right? The fact that we're not at the bacterium level or at the cosmic level, like we're at this random arbitrary zoom. So hopefully that talking like this helps other people realize I don't think I ever finished the story about how I got over my fear of death. So I was in my kitchen ramping up into a panic attack, and I asked myself the question. My consciousness asked my mind the question. And this was before I was ever like in my seat of self, before I even knew what the fuck that phrase meant. And I asked my mind, what is the permutation under which having a panic attack is a useful adaptation to this realm? So, for instance, this is a simulation. Is that a useful adaptation? There's a heaven. Is that there's not, right? Like, what is the combination of things that has to be true for a panic attack to be the useful, like the most productive, useful thing? Because at the time I was very much into efficiency. And so I just challenged my mind with a logic question. And I broke it. There isn't one. There is no way, there's no circumstance that I could conceive of to this day, and I don't believe that it's true. I don't think it's possible that that could help you in this operating system, in the constraints with which we exist. right? Yes, there's other dimensions and realms and permutations in which, sure, not germane to this conversation. Don't waste my time with it. Just kidding. I can't wait to. The stuff that I get excited about is thinking about having a sparring partner to talk about some of this stuff with, because it's so fascinating to me. Anyway, this one I think is probably quite a bit longer than my last one. I have no idea how long it's been. Everything's energy, guys. It's all energy. And the sound, the background noise, the great Om, it's love. It's all it is. All of it. We're surrounded by it, we're fueled by it, we're enveloped by it, we're driven by it. And that's the other thing that happens when you stop taking your consciousness, this godlike power and energy, and putting it onto your mind in that part of your realm. Oh, I'm going to take this a couple clicks deeper, actually. So here's why, and this is so ironic since I'm publishing all this on social media, but here's why the metaverse, social media, is going to it's going to force us to become warrior poets, because it forces you to learn how to snowboard, because you're going off a double black diamond and there's no choice. Like, you're either going to fucking collapse and melt into the fold, or you're going to have to figure out a way to play with the sail, or with the board. Anyway, so every layer of abstraction you get away from being God is closer to hell, right? So heaven is being God. Hell is having no idea of your divinity and no ability to get there, which is why falling back, letting go, right? Hollowing out, surrendering, all of that, let Jesus take the wheel, all that stuff, guys, all the metaphors are all the same fucking thing, is just going this direction. The other direction is that you empower your mind with your consciousness, right? You fuel it up, which it requires. It is unmanifest energy until you give it permission to use yours being your consciousness. Your consciousness drives your mind's thoughts. It brings it from chi, brings it from wherever. I don't know. I haven't gotten there yet, but it's clearly being driven by something other than just calories. It's not just an electrical field. We would have found that by now. What the hell was I talking about? I've got the YouTube open for some of the options of the songs that I'm going to learn as part of my ego destruction activity. And that distracted me on my mind. That's right. So you feed your mind with your consciousness and your energy. And then your mind then creates its own abstractions. You can see this most vividly and simply with your children, or if you can recall anytime yourself when you've been lost in a movie and someone comes up and has to shake you to get your attention. That's what has happened. Like, I cannot emphasize this strongly enough. That is what is happening. Your consciousness has given the energy to your mind. Your mind has decided that it's going to create its own realm in which it's going to run simulations and permutations. And by the way, the whole reason it's doing this is to avoid the way it felt when it came out of the womb and go back towards the way it felt in the womb. And your mind is running all these wild simulations and it's putting you into it, right? So now you've done that. So imagine now you've got this online persona that you're fueling, that your mind is fueling, and it's creating this like online avatar, this ego. It's like an ego of an ego. And now we're getting ready to march that another layer of abstraction further with this whole metaverse premise. And it's not long from there. It's not a huge jump to think that what Elon Musk talks about, which is why I say you can never get outside a coin flip chance, that this is base reality. Because if your mind can do that, what are beings going to be capable of a billion years from now if we just continue the projection out? This goes back to what I was saying before about, like, what if we're shooting so low? What if Christ was like level 1 and we've just been playing, like, pissing on ourselves in puddles? Like, what are we doing? What if you hollow yourself out, you become something, and then it's like, okay, where do we go next? Guys, we've been human beings for like nothing, nada, 300,000, 3 million, it doesn't matter, nothing. Why do we think this is the end game? And why would you be so hubristic as to think it matters if this has anything to do with it, or that, like, you're significant or valued or whatever? It's like, just be there. Every single second of every day is an unbelievable miracle for which we should never stop prostrating ourselves in gratitude. Every bit of it. It's so beautiful. Everything you see, everything you smell, every sense you have is a cosmic chorus, a symphony. It is a math so beautiful. That's what it is. It's a giant math program that the universe is experiencing itself extruding the math problem through the constraints of us and dimensions like time. And I think that we are an organic machine learning mechanism. For what? I don't know if we'll ever know. And with that, my friends, at 11:50 at night, that's going to conclude episode 2 of the Apprenticing Jedi. I'm so excited that I get to wear my American Giant hoodies for something other than just every minute of every day of my life. I never take them off. I've got, I think, 6 or 7 of them. And now that I'm doing this, I'll probably have to buy more because I can't show up to these in the same ones. That's not true. What a silly thing. It's amazing when you get to just watch your thoughts develop in real time. It's like, what a preposterous thing. First of all, I don't give a shit. Second of all, what would it matter? Like, you're not gonna listen to this? First of all, who knows if people are even gonna listen or watch it, right? Like, it could be on Spotify or whatever, or iTunes. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, but even if you did, let's say I was in the same hoodie every time. You're not gonna show up? You're not gonna listen because I had the same color hoodie for 40 episodes? No one gives a shit. That's the kind of stuff that stops you from becoming Christ, because you're wasting your time worrying about what somebody thinks about something you're wearing. And that sounds so grandiose and simultaneously so simple, but it's also true. And the hard part is that, you go from the stage of you say it and you mean it, to you don't say it, to you start saying it and then you beat the shit out of yourself for having said it. And it's just like, there's so many stages, and you can't really start the growth path until you've gotten to the point where you've forgiven yourself for being just a young boy, a young girl, a young androgyne. Um, you've forgiven yourself, and you have accepted the reality, the mathematical reality, that anything you do for the first time, you will be imperfect at. And for 10,000 hours, you will not be a master. And so give yourself some frickin' grace. And so when you find yourself saying things like, well, I'm going to have to buy a bunch more because I can't wear the same. Don't beat the shit out of yourself up about it. That's a waste of time. It just doesn't matter. Just like, ha, there he is. There's that hurt child who needs to attract attention and needs to demonstrate wealth and power and stability, right? Because that's what it would mean if you can afford a bunch of $100 shirts and if you've got the forethought to do it, like all the things that it represents, none of it matters. It's all trash. It's all a waste of time. And when you start focusing on getting rid of the energy inside of you, you will find yourself naturally the energy becomes available to you. Your chi inside your body is being used right now to lash old energy to you. And as those lashings are broken, the chi comes back into your toroid. Google it. And it becomes available to you all the time. And what that powers you to do is it powers you to insert the microcosm between stimulus and response, because that's all you need. It's all you need. Even if in the microcosm, all you did was see the trigger and then it still was a runaway thing that you regretted, that's okay. You saw it. It's better than not seeing it. You're not a rock. You're not a fucking atom. You're not plasma, right? You're a human and you're like, you got to do some tweaks. Guys, you're not a chimp. You're not a rock. Just tweaks. So be kind to yourself. You're a 14 billion-year-old machine. The army talks about special forces and army rangers, right? Folks like that, and the millions of dollars that they're worth in terms of like the training and the time and whatever. You're 14 billion years worth. Don't fucking waste it. I love you. Talk to you later. Apprenticing Jedi.